Hi there, Colin Davis here, shadowtechalchemy.com, Solutio and what else do we have? melissamarimovie.com and melissamarimusic.com. So this is June 30th, 2026, and today we decided that we were going to talk about the alchemical ethic. And, you know, well, what is an ethic? An ethic is a standard for living, right? And you could say that it's sort of the secular version of a moral code, right? And the words moral or morals and ethics are fairly interchangeable. People interchange them. But so, what is an alchemical ethic? Well, this is an ethic that comes out of alchemical life practice. And this isn't something that has really been really well defined, really. I mean, if you go to the most well-developed alchemical life practice that we have in the West, that's the Jungian tradition. And Jung didn't, he consciously tried to stay out of the domain of morals and ethics, because he already felt that he was already falling out of his lane, so to speak. And he was always trying to say, I'm a scientist above all else, and I'm not a philosopher, and I'm not a theologian, and blah blah blah, because he was seen as by many as a mystic and sort of a mystic psychologist. And in those days, and still to this day, anyone that wants to be inside of the framework of academia and rational science and all of that they have to throw away the mysticism and the spirituality and the religious beliefs. And but that's not possible with this work, because alchemy, like I often define it, is the spiritual scientific art of transmutation or transformation. The spiritual scientific art. So it is a science, absolutely it's a science, and we approach it with scientific rigor. But it's also spiritual practice, and it's also an art. And Jung felt insecure about that and didn't and felt probably rightly so. And so he kind of tried to always frame everything, even his mysticism, as science. But so he never really, got into the business of telling people what they should and shouldn't do. And his practice and his whole way was really his way. And on one hand, there's like a lot of contradictions, to tell you the truth, inside of the Jungian way. Because on one hand, I mean, like what I just discussed is a big contradiction, but also he was he was working with theories and practices and modalities that apply to anyone, or anyone that's inclined towards his mode of psychotherapy. But at the same time, what he's working out had to be aligned with his inner truth, and so therefore had to be his own personal practice. And so it was both personal and universal. And so I should just bring up that there was one book that I think is a very important book by Erich Neumann, one of his students and colleagues, who wrote this book in 1949 called Depth Psychology and a New Ethic. And Jung wrote the foreword to it. And he said in there, again, I'm not really in the business of telling people what they should and shouldn't do. But I'm going to let, Erich Neumann do it, and I agree with him. More or less is what he said. And but now here I am, and I'm talking about alchemical ethics. And that's because anyone who develops their own psychospiritual practice, their own way of living, has to have a code of ethics, whether they're conscious of it or not. And then they live by those. And so, and it's every individual's right to be able to say, well, this is what I do. This is what I'm doing. And so even if I call this alchemical ethics today, this is my alchemical ethics. This is the alchemical ethics that Melissa and I developed. This doesn't have to be yours, but I'm just putting it out there because as an example. And it was back in 2017 that I first wrote my psychosocial, what was it called? Well, it had a very long, convoluted title at first, but in the last book, Transforming Darkness, it's called a Psychosocial Declaration of Health or something like that. And it's my alchemical ethics. And it was originally written in 2017. And so I've been checking back in with that, and I still feel exactly the same. It's completely the way I still live and believe. So, sorry, I got some noise going on out there. Just wanted to check in my ear and see what it was. Somebody's mowing the lawn or something. So, what I'm going to talk to you about today is going to be the ethics that we lived by, and because like I said, 2017 is when I first started writing this down, and it's now 2026, and so I've had a long time to work with this and to sit with this and to check back in with it. And then it's just, developed over the course of our lives together, and we pretty much just kind of nailed down, these are the kind of tenets of how to live this way, how to live with inner alchemy at the core of your life. That's what we're talking about here. How to live with inner alchemy at the core of your life. And if you, when I start talking to you about some of this stuff, because I got my notes here, if you, modern secular people will look at something like this and they'll be like, this is what you're putting at the center of your life. Your life is about this. It's about inner development, inner alchemy, shadow work, and self-development work, and soul work, and heart work, and this is what you're putting at the center of your life, not anything else, not your career, not your retirement fund. And that will seem alien to them. But if you were to explain it to any religious, devout religious or spiritual person from all of time, they'd be like, okay, well, it's just your own version of what we do. So there's nothing odd. In fact, this is the natural way to live. And the way that we live now, oriented towards progress and material success and all of that, that's the alien thing. So coming back and putting your personal spiritual practice at the core of your life, that's nothing new. That's the way it's always been. The only thing that's new about this, and even the alchemy itself and doing alchemy is not new. It's, in a very general way, all spiritual practice is alchemy. But that is in the most general way. Because a lot of paths are most paths, especially what we're familiar with in the West, are, mainstream religious spiritual paths are exoteric, and they're very and people are focused on the rituals and the symbols as an outer thing, not so much as an inner thing, like you're doing with the alchemical path, what you're doing with the Jungian path. It's more of an inner focus than it is an external focus. So you start with the inner, and then the outer is the mirror. You don't start with the outer, and then the inner is the mirror. It's both. It's always both. But in this path, we default to the inner. And this is also a path of, let's say, redemption or enlightenment by way of descent rather than ascent or ascent. And most spiritual or religious paths around the world really are more focused on ascension and enlightenment and getting to heaven, right? Whereas this path has all of that too, but you get started by going down. You go down first. You don't go up and then try to avoid going down. You go down into the cave, into the earth, into the unconscious, into the prima materia, into the shadow. You go down, and what you find down there is what you bring back up on your ascent. And it starts with going down. And so that is what makes this alchemical really in the most specific way. And so out of all the spiritual practices that are out there, out of the 20,000 whatever spiritual practices or religions and all of that are out there, a small percentage of them are oriented this way. So in that way, if you describe what you're doing when you're doing this path to other people, in that way, it's not, exactly what everybody has been doing for time immemorial. It is its own esoteric way of going, and it is really probably something that it's at the core of everything, but to actually use this stuff, it's like take a medicine, a tincture, or some kind of potion or whatever, and just take it in full, take it raw. Don't dilute it, undiluted. This is kind of like undiluted religion, undiluted spirituality. So it's been around forever, but it has been something that has been reserved for the specially initiated. And now, because of the way the world is and because of the way information technology is and everything, now you have people like me and so many others that are out there talking about what would be reserved for the specially initiated, just out in the open. And really, there's no reason to have to hide this, because, I mean, we can understand the reason why this kind of material would have been hidden, and why alchemists would have spoken in allegory and would have stayed underground, is because of the tyranny of the Catholic Church in the West, or other monarchies and tyrannies, let's say, in other parts of the world. And so, there was a reason for keeping it on the down low. But now there's no real reason for that, because the elites, so to speak, can't even recognize the value of what we're talking about. They're so checked out. They're so shadow infested and superficial that they don't even know what we're talking about. The algorithm, doesn't, it's just like, it just goes right by them. So it's, and then the average person, if I put this kind of stuff out and just into the world, onto social media, 99.9% of everybody just scrolls by it. They don't know what it is, or have any attraction to it, or anything. It stays underground. It stays esoteric, just because of where most people are at in the world, in their consciousness. They're not oriented towards this path. Now, I do think that, all these things evolve. These, paths evolve in waves, in movements. And so you can have periods of time in any one civilization where you have a growth, a growing, a strengthening of the energies behind some particular spiritual or religious path. And for what we're talking about here, the Western alchemical path, it's probably the 1960s and 70s, maybe the 60s really. Yes, 60s, early 70s is where this was peaking, where there was a lot of energy in areas that were at least adjacent to this. And so then so it kind of peaked then, and then it's waned since then. And we are getting more attention on esoterica in general. We're even getting more attention on Carl Jung now, but it's very superficial. People still aren't reading books. They're not really asking the deepest questions that can be answered through this system. And they're just like looking at little memes, and they're thinking, oh, that's a cool quote by Carl Jung. Yeah, that's cool. And then they scroll on. So that's kind of where it's at right now. And then the Jungians, I think, are the majority of them are in the baby boomer generation who are still alive. And they're starting to check out. And my generation, Gen X, didn't pick it up as much. No generation since then picked it up as much. So that's where we're at, kind of with the greater movement of the whole thing. Although it's really interesting, because what this path offers is something that millions, if not billions, of people could use. And if I were to frame for you what the benefits of it are, which I always do, then, and I'd put it in a very general way, universal way, so many people, a lot of people still would be like, oh no, that's not what I'm into, but a big chunk of the population of our civilization would say, yeah, I wish I could have access to that. I wish I could have access to that level of psychospiritual depth, of emotional depth, of the ability to be intimate with other people, access to my own unconscious, the ability to work with my complexes and quote-unquote issues, and having a symbolic literacy and being able to understand higher levels of reality. These are the kinds of things that come with this path. Opening your heart chakra opening up more and more, living more through your heart, developing the different archetypal energies that are in you and cleaning them and getting them somewhat balanced, and reducing the amount of conflict in your life, and feeling more trusting that your intuition is telling you the right thing and that you are on the right path in life, and being able to read the outer world as a mirror of the inner world. I mean, all this kind of stuff, if you were to frame that to most people and say these are some of the benefits of living this way, and all the benefits of doing the shadow work, that is a lot of the benefits of doing the shadow work, but not having to be bogged down by addictions and compulsive behaviors, and not being riddled with demons, basically, and that's in the more extreme form, or that's a certain kind of terminology, but not being riddled with complexes, or having your parts all dissociated and fighting with each other, you would say in IFS. These are all incredible benefits. And most people would say, yes, I would like that. If I could take a pill and have that, they would like that. If you say, well, this is a whole life practice that you have to dedicate your whole life to, and put all of this other stuff aside, then that's when they choose not to do that. So it takes us back to the Matrix movie, right? Most people are like Cypher. They would rather have the Matrix, even though it's fake, than have the real world, because the fake world is more enticing and more exciting to certain immature aspects of their psyche. It's not more enticing to your soul, to your inner core, but it is to your ego. So many people choose the Matrix. They choose, they choose the Matrix. It's like, that's the easiest way to kind of put it right now. I was taking some notes on the Matrix earlier, and it's like the Matrix is basically like it's like you could see it as it's a cage. It's a zoo, it's a cage, where you are given everything that you need, basically, except the freedom of your soul. You basically do not get to live a Matrix life, a mainstream collectivist life. You don't get the soul development path. You don't get the soul freedom path. You don't get to be a true individual. It's like Jung's term, individuation. You don't get to be a true individual when you take the Matrix ride, because everything is off the shelf. It's all off the shelf stuff. Okay, I'll grab this identity, I'll grab this identity trait, I'll grab this. I'm going to go shopping. I'm going to get off the shelf, the different scripts that I'm going to use to put together my identity. I'm going to walk into the Matrix department store and I'm going to look at the different mannequins and see how they're dressed. And then I'm going to get everything to make myself in alignment with the mannequin that seems to fit with me. And then I'm just going to live that live through that player piece, as Melissa called it. I'm just going to live through that player piece, through that persona, through that mask, and then I'm going to, live by those social prescriptions. And it's a life that is, I can't say actually that it's completely wrong or bad. It is not. It is not by nature wrong or bad. The matrix can get very, very parasitic, and it can get very shadowy when civilizations decline. But the matrix doesn't necessarily have to be incredibly shadowy. It's just a curated framework that that allows for it's kind of like because I was talking last week about the bees and the whole trip with the bees in the tree out front, and beehive mentality. It's like the bees don't have individual freedom. They can't go do their own thing. But what they are doing is they're serving the colony, the hive, and the queen. And they're preserving the species, right? So you can't say that what they're doing is wrong or bad. It's just that they're just very limited in their freedom, and that's the way that animals are supposed to be. Now, humans are different, and we have the ability to do our own thing, but still, most humans, we're always locked into language, into culture, into identity. We're always locked into it to some degree. But the alchemist, or the one who's awakening, the one who's seeing outside the matrix, has just higher degrees of freedom, customization, and the ability to be more authentic and individualistic, not in the sense that they're not collective people, they're not social people, and they don't give back to society, not in that way, but that they just have more of a personally authentic and self-developed life, persona, belief system, mindset. It's much more custom. What we do is much more custom than the average person. So, but most people, they turn down the opportunity to do that. This is available to anyone who has this calling, but most people turn it down. They just don't follow through with it. And so that means they're intended to be collectivists, and they're intended to serve in that way, and that's fine. I don't think that's wrong. Like anybody has to take an accounting of their own shadow stuff, whether you're on the inside of the system or on the outside. We all have that responsibility. Just being an insider doesn't make you necessarily shadowy and evil and bad or anything like that. Not at all. But anyway, so our kind of going off on a tangent there, and what we're talking about is the ethics of this all. And so the first thing to say is, as you know, that everything that I talk about that is to do with alchemy or inner work or healing and any of this, individuation, all of this is coming through the work I did with Melissa. That 12-year period in which Melissa was in my life, and in which we, essentially downloaded everything that went into our books and everything that we lived by, and all of this just came through us in the same way that I often use the comparison of how artists, especially musicians, because we're both musicians, get together, and when the chemistry is right, what they create together is greater than the sum of all the parts. right? So they become channels for unconscious energy, creativity within the unconscious of the group itself. And then they, and they create something novel that way. And that's what Melissa and I did. We really just jammed this stuff out, and we used our intuition just like how artists do to figure out, is that right? Is that right? We also checked what we were doing with existing science, existing psychology, and all of that. We didn't just completely make this stuff up like it was some kind of channeled New Age stuff. It wasn't like that. It's just really honing in intuitively on what is the practice, what is the art, what are the priorities, what are the tenets, what are the maxims, what are the archetypes behind what it is that we're doing. And then just talk it through and work it through, and then just keep on, speaking it, writing it, making art out of it. So now I'm on the other side of that. Melissa isn't with us anymore. And so now I have this estate that she left. So now I can look back over this and I can go, okay, well, what is the essence of it all? So this is our particular thing. And I forgot, I made a little, I'll play it right now. I made a little animation. Let's see, where is that? Solutio fractal. This animation, watch this. You see this? Okay, where's the pause button? This is, just imagine that this is all spiritual practices, over the course of time across all of mankind. And as you go towards the center, that center nucleus, that's the perennial philosophy, right? That's the archetypal core that is inside of every spiritual practice and religion for all of time. They all have foundational, archetypal, universal properties, and that are always there. And so that's the perennial philosophy, and so that's in the middle. And what we're doing, like you can see, it's a yin-yang symbol. And so on the top where you have the lighter side of it, those are spiritual practices spiritual practices and traditions that focus on ascent, rising, enlightenment, moving towards the light and getting out of sin, out of this world, right? And then the lower side of it is the darker side, the yin side, if you use the Taoist yin-yang. And these are paths of descent, right? And this is where the alchemical paths are, right? This is where certain esoteric and alchemical paths are, as they're paths of you are ascending. Also, they're balanced paths. You turn the full cycle, but you go down first. And so let me play it now. And all that happened was me and Melissa. See that little red dot right there? That's what we called Shadow Tech Alchemy. What I'm calling Solutio Alchemy now. That's all that is. All that is me and Melissa's one little spiritual practice that we developed, one spiritual system that we developed out of all the possibilities there. But it does have a location. It does have a location in the greater ecosystem of spiritual paths. And so that's why I put this together so that you could see that. It does have a location in the alchemical tradition. So that's all. That's all we've done. And I would say that if I wanted to, I could draw in the Jungian system, because the Jungian system is we're inside of that. We're doing our own thing, but we're inside of right? Well, it's just the Jungian system is just a 20th century version of the alchemical arts, the shamanic alchemical arts. Okay. Now, I got some stuff written down here. So that was all kind of getting us up to speed here. I've covered a lot of what was in the beginning of my notes here, but here's some specifics. We retain Christian morality in general, although we do not take religious scripture literally, but rather metaphorically and symbolically. This does not diminish the truth of it. We take the myth of Christ and interpret it internally alchemically. Right? We're situated inside of the Judeo-Christian and Christian ethical, legal, philosophical framework, culture. And so our language is built out of that. Our unconscious is built out of that. A good degree of it is. And our social practices and our rituals and why we drive on the right side of the road and everything, it's all baked in. Just all baked into the Christian, and then Judeo-Christian and Western in general, back into Rome, back into Greece, and from there into Egypt and Mesopotamia. This is our culture. This is the water we swim in. And so we never can walk away from Christian ethics, Christian morality, Christian practice, Christian ritual, Christian symbolism. We can't walk away from it. It's there. It's in everything. It's in the way the cities are built and everything. So we're not trying to throw it off. We're not like communist atheists who are angry at it and wanting to throw it off unsuccessfully. We're saying, okay, this is our heritage, this is our lineage, but what is a more evolved, advanced way of interpreting what this is? And so we keep our legal system. We keep, we can make all kinds of changes, but we can we can progress, but we generally we don't reject our Christian heritage outright. We just, as Jungians and as alchemists, we look at our myths, we look at our scripture, and we say, what does that represent in the psyche of mankind, in the psyche of the Westerner, and in my psyche? What does that represent? What is that a dream image representing? What kind of dream image is that representing an aspect of me? What is the meaning of that? We apply our symbolic literacy to it. We see how the myth of Christ is really Jung's myth of individuation. That it's a more of a Gnostic kind of a myth, and it's an alchemical myth. And Christ is if we had the more alchemical version of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and we had a more alchemical equal version where it was the two of them, we could have had a different version. It's just that's not where the Western mind was. It wasn't ready for that. And so the feminine side, the anima, had to go underground, had to get tucked in. But what we can do is we can pull it out. And then we can see the androgyny of Christ himself, right? and his path as our path internally through the individuation process, through the shadow work and through all of the inner alchemy. That's where we're living the life of Christ internally, not necessarily. The traditional Christians would have it so that you would resonate with Christ as a feeling state and as an image, and then you would perform the rituals that connect you back to Christ and the life of Christ. But you aren't taking it internally as an internal alchemical process and studying the symbols of the myth and translating them in terms of your psychological development. That isn't being done in mainstream Christianity. And so we can do that if we want to. And we don't even have to put our eyeball exactly on the Christian myth and say, okay, well, let's do a new interpretation of that. We don't even have to do that. We go into the archetype, the archetypal patterns that are beyond the Christian myth, right? And we're hooking back into those. And so, we're not against it. We're not fighting against the Christian myth, and we're not also stuck to interpreting it over and over again and copying it over and over again. But it sits there, and we're relating to it. And we can have a relationship with it that isn't to either extreme. And to the degree that the Christian myth has provided us with a whole lot of stabilizing ethical functions, moral functions, even though people in the Middle Ages or 1,500 years before BC or whatever, because we have all that stuff in there in the Old Testament and the New Testament, even though those people are thinking that the reason why we act this way is because God told us so, even though we don't necessarily believe that literally, we still recognize that this is the operating system that our people has been using, and it, to a good degree, functions well. And our psyches are built on it. It's like in Microsoft Windows. It's based on what's called DOS, D-O-S. What does that stand for? It sounds like it stands for Duality Operating System, which is what it is. But it's can't remember what it is, but it's DOS, MS-DOS, and that's the core code. And then all the versions of Windows have been built on top of that. And so we're coming out of that. And so our practice, our alchemical practice, our alchemical way of life is an offshoot of this. And so we don't throw that away, right? And the legal system, and stop at the stoplight, and turn the other cheek, and the golden rule, and all of that, and take the log out of your own eye before you try to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Don't be a hypocrite. And all of the Christian moral virtues, we keep all that. That works great. But what we do really, we take a big step up when it comes to the shadow side of things. That's where we are really taking a huge step up. Not just the orientation, not just our ability to be symbolically literate and as above, so below, apply what's showing up in the outer as a mirror of what's going on in the inner and all this stuff. Not just that, but the whole way that we approach the shadow the dark side of reality, the dark side of humanity, that is still can be seen as an overlay on top of the Christian myth of Lucifer and the devil and sin. You can still see the alchemical way of dealing with this, the Jungian way of dealing with this as an overlay on top of that, but it is very distinctly more advanced. And so this was, I think, incredibly well put, and I would say that for me, this is one of this is a very, very important text. It's called Depth Psychology and a New Ethic, and I've created a paraphrased AI-read version of it on the Shadowtech Alchemy YouTube channel. And I've talked about it many times, and I will always talk about this because this was put out in 1949 after World War II, and Jung wrote the foreword to it. And wasn't I talking about it earlier tonight? Jung wrote the foreword to it, and they said that with all our Christian morals and ethics, that didn't stop World War II or World War I. That didn't stop us from entering mass hysteria and mass demonization and projection of the shadow. That didn't stop it. The Christianity, which has all this morality and these boundaries built in that we're supposed to be staying with, we just threw that all out the window. We all did. We just threw it out the window. So that didn't work. So it's all nice to have these Christian morals and to be living by these, and they do help structure the society in a good way. And it's been progressing, but they don't have any ability to stop us from projecting our own shadows. And Neumann explained that this is built into the mythology. It's built into the way that Christians and all Western religions look at the dark side of the psyche, the dark side of reality and the human condition. And they look at it in a way that requires projection. It requires projection and displacement and demonization. And so, because the typical way in which the shadow works, you've organized a nice, clean society for yourself, and here's all the rules and the boundaries, and this is how we all get along. And you think of yourself as a good person, and you're doing the right thing and living a pious life and all of that. But what are you doing with your animal nature? What are you doing with your primal nature? What are you doing with your rage, your aggression, your sexuality, your narcissism? What are you doing with all that? Your envy, your jealousy. Your grief, your guilt? What are you doing with all that? Where's that going? That's not going into this nice, clean society that you've built. That's going into your shadow. And then it's got to come out. And then because you don't have any clear prescriptions for how to work with it, except, let's say, something like, the rituals themselves do serve as, mass and confession. These do serve as some kind of shadow metabolizing functions, but not nearly developed enough. So within the Judeo-Christian ethic is a requirement, just at the psychological, energetic level, that we project our own shadows onto other people, find them to be demons, find them to be enemies, and then go attack them. And then that dumps our shadow energy. And that's built into the system. It's built into the Christian myth, theology, and the whole operating system. And there's and the way it's framed symbolically, mythologically, where you have the devil, well, you have the whole myth of Lucifer and splitting off from God, and then falling to earth, and then you have the kind of some other kind of a version of it where it's very unclear. Actually, it's not quite pulled together in Christian theology, the difference between Satan and Lucifer. You have three names. You have Satan, Lucifer, the devil. Well, you also have like Beelzebub and Mephistopheles and those that, so you have all these terms. And the descriptions of all of them vary a little bit because they're different shadow aspects. And they're not, they can't really be combined into one. But there's no prescription in the Christian or Judeo-Christian system for forming a relationship with them and working with them and understanding that they're parts of us. They're demonized and pushed down and pushed underground and seen as something to avoid and don't touch and get behind me, Satan, and all of that. So we don't have a prescription, we don't have a modality, we don't have a plug-in in our operating system that allows us to metabolize our shadow material. Like I said, we have some stuff, but not enough. And so after World War II, Neumann and Jung came out and they said, yeah, this is true. We have to have another layer of ethics on top of what we already had. We have to have a new ethic, and that has to be one of conscious individuation and shadow work. We have to do shadow work on ourselves. We have to metabolize this material to the greatest degree we can. We have to talk about it to others. We have to share this with others, teach others. We have to turn this into a whole ethical mandate to individuate, to self-develop, and to metabolize your shadow. Because otherwise we're going to blow each other up. And so that was the proper prescription. But the Western world ignored it. And even the Jungians refused to take up take up that ethical mandate and continue to prescribe it. They talk about the shadow to some degree, but mostly the Jungian community has actually even taken the shadow out of its proper position as being the most important aspect of the work and of self-realization. And they've taken it out and put it to the side, and they've put it back in the shadow. They haven't swept it under the rug. The Jungians have not actually swept it fully under the rug or anything, but it isn't taking it's the highest position it should, and that's just because people are like that. People don't want to embrace that. And then the Jungians have succumbed to the pressure of their constituents. And so it's sort of just down there. And you have specific people like Robert L. Moore, for example, who really worked with it, who really said, and Jung did too, but Robert Moore really worked with it and said, you've got to stay on this. You've got to stay on this shadow thing. You've got to be working with this. You've got to be exploring this. You've got to be continuing to develop these understandings. We've got to do this. I've never heard him bring up Neumann's book, but this is basically, he's got the same attitude. So when I go back to what Melissa and I are doing, what our alchemical ethics are, this is, even though Melissa didn't even know about Neumann's mandate when she was alive. I found this book a year later after she passed. And I read it. It's a very difficult read, and that's why I paraphrased it. But it's it's saying every single thing that Melissa and I said together, that we intuited must be the way. Shadow work, shadow awareness must be the way. And so now I take that and I put that's like exhibit 1. And I'm like, boom, I just like dropped that on the desk. Exhibit 1. And so that's in there now. That was in my Manifesto of Ethics from 2017. You know, the essentials of that were in there. But then once I found this last year, then it was like, okay, I got that now. That's great. So in our system, we're taking that seriously. We're using that ethical mandate that Jung and Neumann put out, that we take full responsibility for our shadows and we consciously individuate. So there's that. And like I said earlier, we retain our Christian morality, but we just reinterpret, or we don't reinterpret, we just put another map, another layer, another topological map, a symbolic and psychological, psychospiritual map on top. Because I'm reading off my notes here. We are metatheists and perennialists, right? Metatheists. In other words, we're not polytheists who have, multiple gods and energies in our system. We're metatheists. We get above all systems, right? That's integral consciousness. That's second tier consciousness. And in our system, also, we're integrated with integral theory. We don't go into, we don't require integral theory with all of its detail and everything that Ken worked out to be adhered to or followed or understood at all. The only things that are really in integral theory which are the biggest things really, but that we have put into our system is the 4 quadrants model, the 4 quadrants tool, and the basic stages. Just to understand where different people are at and where we're at in the basic stages of psychosocial consciousness. And then using the 4 quadrants to be able to create a system of ethics and individuation that applies to all domains of life. So, upper left-hand quadrant, this is what you're doing in your own personal work, your personal psychospiritual work. Lower left-hand quadrant, that's what you're doing in your relationships and to the degree that you create and interface with culture. And your upper right-hand quadrant, that's the body quadrant. And that's keeping your body clean and healthy. And working through your addictions and your chronic behavior. And then lower right-hand quadrant, that's how you plug into the society. That's your footprint. That's so your whole way of working with society and your contracts, business and personal contracts, everything is clean, nothing is parasitic. Your environmental footprint, you're putting attention onto all the ways in which you plug in to the greater community and to the matrix like we were talking about earlier. So that's in there. So we use the 4 quadrant system to keep an eye on all of the domains of reality so we can bring our alchemical ethics into our life in a full and holistic way. So that's in there. I say here that we limit our contracts with the matrix and limit the influence of matrix culture, except to study it. But it doesn't drive us. Or let's say it drives us less than the average person. Like I was talking about earlier about living in the matrix and picking up your identity out of parts off the shelf. We all still have an identity. We're all still interfacing with the matrix, with the social world, with civilization. But we're just doing it consciously. Like in the movie The Matrix, actually, Neo learns how to go in and out of it, right? That's what we're doing. The Matrix is, I should write this down, the Matrix is one of the, is like a spiritual film for us. And you have the level of culture, but then you have the alchemical layer that's above that. So Neo, the new man, he's the alchemist, and he's going in and out of the Matrix. He's not trapped in it. He's not just like in the living in the movie metaphor that we used, Melissa and I always use, that we talked about last week. You're just plastered to the screen. You're just stuck in the theater, just glued to the screen. That's how most people are. But as a director or co-director or participant, you're looking at it from the back seat and you're watching it with a meta perspective. You're watching it with the eye of a director and of a filmmaker. And you understand how the whole thing has been put together and the symbolic meaning of things and the mythic meaning of things in the movie. You're looking at it with a meta perspective. So that's how we're doing it. We're out of the Matrix, we're in the Matrix. We're out of the Matrix. I can go into the Matrix and I can talk to people about politics and this versus that, or this policy versus that policy, good, bad, blah, blah, blah. I can do all that. Or I can zoom out of it and be like, all that is based on this archetype, and the reason why it's running is because this archetype is moving very powerfully through this culture, and it's shadowy because of this kind of trauma and this kind of past, and so that's what that is. And I can look at it psychologically, psychosociologically, and get out of it and just see it as an operation happening. I don't have to get all sucked into it, pulled down by it. I can go into it or I can get out of it. So we're doing that. And we follow the alchemical principles, right? The basic one, the first alchemical maxim, as above, so below, right? As within, so without. The microcosm in the macrocosm in the microcosm, what Ken Wilber calls holarchy. That's the basis of everything. And so we're recognizing, when we want to understand reality more, that the universe manifests in this somewhat fractal-like way, where you have patterns of the external world that are self-similar to patterns in the internal world. And that when you're trying to figure out something in the internal world, you can find modeling for it in the external world. Or when you're trying to figure something out in the external world, you can find modeling of it in the internal world, because there's an archetypal and universal fractal-like relationship between the inner and the outer. Because we come from the outer and the outer comes from the inner. It's all one. So of course these patterns are going to go across the subjective and the objective. So we're looking for those patterns. We're recognizing those patterns. We're also living through, see where this is in my list. Where is this in what I'm about to say now in my list here? We recognize that all is mind, or the objective psyche, and what we call living in the movie. We study and follow dreams, synchronicities, and epiphanies. So we're not just using as above, so below as some kind of like problem-solving modality. We are doing that, but we're also recognizing that stuff shows up when you have symbolic literacy and you have the training to be able to see the dreamlike dynamics that are going on, not just in here, but out there too. And so when stuff shows up in the outer dream, in the lucid dream, or in the movie, we're recognizing that that's a reflection of something that's going on in us. When we find something meaningful when we stick to something and we're like, that triggers me, or that's meaningful to me, that's I feel a connection with that thing, that person, that occurrence, then we go, okay, that's resonating with something in here, and what is it? And then when you have some kind of psychological mapping and psychological topography, then you can kind of go, oh, okay, I see where that fits in. So we're doing dream analysis on the external world and what shows up in our life. In the same way that we interpret dreams, and we look for the meaning in dreams, and we link them back to our knowledge of symbolism and myth, we do the same thing in the outer world. This is living in the movie. We're not just watching the movie, we're living in it. We're living with that. So we're getting all of this meaning. We're getting all of this mythic, symbolic meaning about the interconnection between the outer world and the inner world. And we're like, in this, we're on a magic carpet ride, right? We're jumping into the movie screen. We're getting into the movie, into the emulsion of the film. Because so I'm going through the alchemical principles, not just the ones that are particular to me and Melissa, but the ones that are particular to all alchemy and in whatever formation. We always start with the prima materia. When we talk about inner development, when we talk about healing, when we talk about psychospiritual healing, we're talking about getting into the shadow, getting into the prima materia, getting into I just saw a new term for it, massa confusa. Yeah, mass of confusion. We're getting into the massa confusa and pulling it apart. So we're starting there. That's where we start. And then everything just naturally gravitates up and into more and more refined levels from there. So we're always starting with descent, with the prima materia, the first matter. And then we're moving towards the conjunctio, right? The alchemical wedding, the coincidentia oppositorum, right? The coincidence of opposites, the bringing together of the opposites. What Melissa called homobilancia, balanced mankind. That's always the goal of alchemy. The quest for the Holy Grail and the Philosopher's Stone. This is all about uniting the opposites. It's all about uniting masculine and feminine, animus and anima, and the shadow and the ego, right? And the mundane with the transcendent, and the outer world with the inner world, right? And so heart and mind, body and mind, it's all about integration of opposites, and to create a sacred third, to create an alchemical child, to create novelty, something new, a synthesis, right? So we're bringing those things together, all aspects of the psyche which are oppositional and in conflict with each other or estranged from each other, parts in parts work, parts that are dissociated. This is all about bringing everything back together towards wholeness, as the Jungians talk about. So this conjunctio, this alchemical wedding, this is where we're going. So we're not just in Shadowland all the time. We're in Shadowland so that we can get a reckoning of what is oppositional to the ego and to the persona. Right? What is oppositional to the ego and the persona? You can't bring together opposites if you have no familiarity with what's opposing your conscious mind and your persona mask. If you don't know what's oppositional to that lives in the unconscious, and you've never talked to it, you've never felt it, you have, but you've just been very unconscious of the way it's been interfacing with you. And so you got to go in there and you got to familiarize yourself with that. And being familiar with something doesn't just mean analyzing it, looking at it with the conscious mind, with the analytical mind. It also means feeling it. To know something is to feel it, not just to see it, but to feel it. So this is part of the getting to know the shadow material. And so then as more you relate to it and know it and feel it and get a feel for it and all of that, that's what reunites it, that's what integrates it, and now you have a conscious relationship with this material. Your rage, your grief, your fear, your sexuality, your aggression, your narcissism, your grandiosity, all of this, your shame, your envy, your jealousy, the whole list. Because you've gone in there like, oh yeah, I got that. Oh, that's what that is, and that's what that is. You're familiar with it. It's not estranged anymore. It's not shoved down underground like the devil, right? So that whole thing of the union of opposites, that's what this is all about. The Philosopher's Stone in alchemy, there's a lot of different kind of versions of it. The Philosopher's Stone, it's been seen, it's been mythologized to be a number of things that are related and spectacular. And the elixir of, the secret to immortality, some kind of elixir of immortality, seen in the most banal or external way, that's just total folly there. Seen in the way of the creation of the light body, like some alchemical practices will go into. The creation of the light body that survives this life and is reincarnated. Now, you can talk about the Philosopher's Stone as the creation of some kind of of that. And so there is an immortality aspect to the Philosopher's Stone, to the great work, the magnum opus, that has to do with that kind of a thing. But the idea that the human body will live forever or live much longer, that's just throw that out. That's not important. But the Philosopher's Stone and the Holy Grail is like a version of it, is about balance, and it's about wholeness, and it's like I was saying, joining, it's King Arthur and Guinevere back together again, and then Camelot is renewed, right? So he falls away from his heart and from the feminine, and he goes on a purely masculine warrior path, and he has his whole life and his kingdom, and doing it in this very masculine way. And then at some point that stage runs out of steam, and he runs out of steam. And so Camelot falls. The body falls. Life falls apart. You have a dark night of the soul. And so then he has to find aspects of himself that will go in search of what he has lost. And so that's Parsifal. So Parsifal goes into the woods, into the wilderness. That's the shadow. And he goes and he finds all of these buried aspects of Arthur. Parsifal is a function of Arthur. And he goes in there and he does all of this shadow work. And eventually he grasps the Grail. The Grail is the symbol of unity and wholeness, and it's also the feminine shape. And so it's the heart shape. It's not a heart shape, but it's the heart chakra, and so then Parsifal brings that back to Arthur, and Arthur is redeemed. He's made whole, and Camelot is revived, and he's reunited with Guinevere. So, and the John Borman version of the Grail myth in the film called Excalibur from 1981, that's the one to see. That's the masterpiece. That's like, what was the one from the Middle Ages? Like Thomas Mallory, his version is the one that's like all of this is based on. I think Borman's film is like the 20th century recapitulation or retelling of the Grail myth. And I think everybody should see that. So this is all the Philosopher's Stone. This is all the great work. This is what it's all about. A woman integrating her masculinity, a man integrating his femininity. And, you could put it in all kinds of ways, and balancing of the chakras, of the kundalini. I mean, you can put it in all different, it's been said in so many different ways, but that's what we're doing here. So, and that's accomplished through the integration of the opposites, but they cannot be integrated until you come to know them and feel them and relate to them. And so that's what the shadow work's about. And then you got other kinds of, you got different kinds of shadow work. You got anima animus work, and you could consider that kind of a higher level of it. And if you want to, you can kind of break it all down, all the alchemical stages and all of that, but it's not really necessary. The main thing to do is just get your toolkit going with the shadow work, and then everything just emerges on its own from there. As I got on my notes here, we recognize that human evolution is occurring within vast periods of time, and we understand that we are just guests here to learn, grow, and contribute, but we do not need to save the world. All we have to do is discover and live our soul path, right? So when we do this work, we're contributing to the world. And when you're developing yourself so that you can be a more balanced person, a more loving person, a less neurotic person, a more relaxed person, a more fulfilled person, and gentle person, and wise person, because you have wisdom generated out of doing this, well then every interaction you have with society brings light, brings balance, right? Every person you interact with, you go get your tires rotated, and you're interfacing with the people at the desk there or whatever. When I go into the world, I know that I can see at levels that everybody else can't see. I know that. And it's like I saw something somebody posted on Twitter, on X today. And it was this woman who has this What Do I Know channel or whatever we call these things, profile. She posts a lot of spiritual stuff, but I can't remember what the quote was, but it was something to do with Jung or something Jungian, and it was basically saying that the more evolved person does not look down on other people and rub it in their face that they're blind to things that they can see. It's like I go to a movie and I have a certain level of understanding of making films, or I'm a music producer and I have a certain level of understanding of making records and all that. Now, I don't rub it in people's face just because they don't know how it's put together. Right? So we don't rub it in anyone's face or hold it against anyone just because they're not on, specifically in this incarnation as dedicated to awakening as we are. But we go out there and we recognize that we can see things that they can't see, and we can start to open their eyes. We can give them little bits of gold. So when I go to get my tires rotated, or when I go to the gas station, or when I go to get a pair of pants at the department store, or whatever I do, I'm interfacing with people knowing that everybody's kind of asleep. And so then I get in the line and I talk to that person and I hold eye contact with them, and I have already studied them before I even get to the cash register with them. I've already been studying them for a few minutes. I already know something about the way they interact with the other people or whatever. I already have some kind of perspective on something. I've noticed something, and then I bring that up in some kind of a way. And then they're like, oh, this guy can see something. He saw something that these other people didn't see. Or I listen to the way they speak, and I notice something, and I always orient it towards growth and towards the positive. Whenever I sort of have an interaction with somebody in the Matrix, and I sort of drop something, I always orient it towards their development or their joy, or having, so that it will have a light and positive effect on them, right? Even if I say something that's cynical and kind of dark or whatever, I will laugh. I'll laugh at the same time, and so we can have like a dark humor about something, but it will be enlightening. So the person who's working on themselves, who's awakening, is able to then go into the world and able to help awaken other people. And then some people who will take a little bit more of a bite out of it, then you can give them a little bit more information, or you can help them in whatever way. Or if there's somebody that you're working with, if you work in a I work for myself, so I don't really interface with a lot of people, in the work environment. But if you're working with people, you're just looking around you're just being available with your higher perspective to be able to help anybody that needs help. So just by doing this work and waking up and developing and becoming more healthy, then you have experience and wisdom that other people can use, and then you can deliver that. That's how you're saving. You're not saving the world. The world is doing what it's doing, like I'm saying. We're just showing up as, temporary riders, temporary guests. And then we have certain chores here and certain responsibilities here. And so we just do that, and then we get off the planet. And whether we reincarnate, which we probably do, but however that works, probably don't understand how that works. However that works, or whatever it is, we're just getting it going. Just keeping it going. We're just keeping the thing going. The whole thing, life, this is life. It's all life. And life came before us, and life will be here after us. We didn't create this whole thing. We didn't even create our own societies. Did anybody here create a society? No one did. A society just came through us. We just watched ourselves do it. We just watched ourselves sleepwalking through human evolution. That's all we're doing, is watching ourselves sleepwalking through the continual evolution of the species and different stages and all of that. We're not consciously doing any of this, because nobody's really conscious enough to be able to make those kinds of high-level decisions. So we don't have to be worried that we have to save the world, because we're not in control of it. We didn't start it. We're not running it. And so we just have to tune into what it is, tune into the movie that we showed up in, and then play our roles and do it with some improvisation and some and awareness. Everybody's just playing their role, but most people are asleep and they don't know that they're reading a script, and they're just sleepwalking. And then what we're doing as alchemists is we know what our role is, we know what its archetypal background is, and we know kind of where we fit in with the whole thing, and we're improvising with the role. We can't get out of the script. We can't get out of the movie. We can't get off the film strip. But we can improvise in it, and we can stay awake to it, and we can get off on the witnessing of this whole play, because it is very, very entertaining and very, very interesting and meaningful when you get to this higher level of seeing what's behind it all, and how it's operating at the scripting level, and the interconnection of everything, and what the psyche's doing, and how the outer psyche's relating with the inner psyche. And it's just fantastic. It's just fantastic, constant entertainment and constant numinosity and constant deep meaning coming out of your movie. So we're not fundamentally responsible for what happens, but we can definitely have a very interesting ride. Okay, so I think that's kind of what I had on my notes. This is not the whole thing, Read that Alchemical Manifesto of Ethics. It's in the Transforming Darkness book, which, by the way, anybody can get that for free on the website, shadowtechalchemy.com. But there's an article on the articles page. It says, write your personal manifesto of ethics. And I recommend that you do it. And then I show you mine as an example. Here's what I wrote down. I wrote that down in like an hour. I'm like, you know what? I don't really even know what my ethics are. So I'm just going to write it down. I'm just going to write it down. It was like 2017. And I just chunked it out, edited it a little bit, put it on Facebook. And then later I just pulled it back out again. I think out of all the tenets that I had written down, like I don't know how many there are on there, like 15 or something. I think I pulled one of them out that was kind of redundant. But other than that, it's the same. So, but anyway, that is kind of my alchemical ethics, and there's a lot on there that I think that very much resonates with the Jungian way and with this whole alchemical way of being that I've been talking about tonight. So where are we with time? Hi to folks who are in the chat, JG Gunner and Dana. And if anybody else wants to chime in, we're having a little bit of a quiet night tonight. Probably because nobody wants to hear about ethics. Sorry, but it's part of the deal, part of the 4 quadrants, right? This is the lower left-hand quadrant. So yeah, so that's something there. And yeah, if anybody wants to say anything about what we've talked about tonight, any kind of comment, any kind of question, I'll respond back. We got a little bit more time, so we can come up with something else that's in the same direction to work with. I got these. I told you, was it last week? I told you about we did the whole episode on living in the movie, and I brought up the whole situation with the bees. What was going on in the tree with the bees. And so I was very, very connected, especially at the time, but still am, to the whole idea of these bees speaking to me and saying, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. They made a huge impression on me to look at me. And there was all these synchronicities and be this and be that and everything. And of course, Melissa, her name means honeybee. And then there's the whole Greek, the Greek spiritual mythic reality of the Melissae, the Melissa priestesses of Demeter, and Persephone, and the Eleusinian mysteries, and the Melissa priestesses. And so I thought, this is very important that I have to look at this, because Melissa and I, we were very aware of the Persephone myth and its involvement in her life, that archetype in her life. But we didn't, and we knew about the Melissa priestesses, but we didn't really have much detail on it. And now that the bees are coming to me, and then the whole thing with that beekeeper, and his name was Colin, and I formed a friendship with him, and now I have the hive that came out of the tree, that the world tree in the front lawn, that was like Melissa's. She used that, and that beehive that came out of there, and now that hive has been transferred to Colin's property, and we have our own hive now that I can get my own honey out of. And the whole occurrence of how that happened, and the synchronicities around that, is just too great for me. Of course, with what I do, I have to take that seriously. So I ordered 2 books about one of them is this woman's, I think, pretty academic study, and going through all the literature and through the artifacts, the cultural artifacts of Greece and everything, to learn about what these Melissa priestesses were doing and what that was all about. And so I've got that book now. So I'm going to read that. And then I got this other one that this other guy wrote that's more, I don't know as much about it, but I ordered this one at the same time, just out of intuition, and about bee shamanism. So I'm going to be digesting this stuff and pulling this in, because this is how we work here. So when you get something that's very synchronistic like that, you take it seriously and you follow it. Oh, and then I got the honey. I got a chunk of honeycomb out of the tree, put it in a mason jar, and I got a couple inches high of honey out of that thing. And I'll tell you this last thing. And then I ordered some lemon balm leaf, which is the flower of the Melissa priestesses. And in fact, the scientific name of lemon balm is Melissa something or other. So I ordered some of that, and then I had my first drink of that lemon balm tea with the honey out of that tree today. So mixed with some other honey that Colin gave me. So anyway, I'm taking it seriously, and I'm integrating it into my spiritual practice and into my ritual. What's going on, James? I did manage a copy of The Secret of the Golden Flower about 2 hours after finishing Marie-Louise von Franz's Alchemical Active Imagination. You did manage a copy? You mean you, I'm not sure what you're saying here about the order of operations or whatever, but I know what you're talking about. And in fact, I haven't read the one landed in your lap. Yeah. Well, I got it right up here on the screen next to me. Synchronistically, yes, exactly. I got there's another guy named Ronnie Pontiac who was for I think 7 years was the assistant of Manly P. Hall, and he's been on Jeffrey Mishlov's New Thinking Aloud program a lot. If anybody doesn't know about Jeffrey Mishlove, New Thinking Aloud, on YouTube, it was like a public TV program years ago. He interviews a lot of spiritual masters and esotericists. But Ronnie Pontiac was just posting, and I have a bond with Ronnie Pontiac. Actually, we both lost our wives within a few months of each other, and we were both sort of on similar paths, and we both had bands with our wives and everything, and so we kind of have bonded. But I noticed that Ronnie has a new Substack post out about the secret of the golden flower, and what is his name, Wilhelm, who put out the first translation that in English that Carl Jung wrote the foreword to. I know that's out there. I know that's Chinese Naidan alchemy, and I know about that, but I have not studied it. I haven't gone into the secret of the golden flower. But I'm going to read this article by him, and I'm realizing I think that I'm probably going to have to start looking at that now. Yeah, okay, you know Ronnie Pontiac and Stephen Heller. Yeah, of course. No, I was thankful. Melissa and I both got to meet Stephen Heller, and we gave him a signed copy of our book Shadow Tech, and he accepted it. That was cool. So I don't know who's managing his library, but our book may be in there now. Who knows? Maybe not. Maybe he threw it away. But yeah, he's like a second in line after Manly P. Hall. He's gone now. He just died this year, and he was in his 90s. But he was just a master, and just an incredible esoteric scholar and individual. And yes, that is the one. It's incomplete. There's a new translation. I will probably get it. Yeah, I remember when I looked at it originally, which was, I don't know, 7 years ago, whatever. And I wasn't in the mindset where I could go there. I was just more tuning into the Jungian side of things, because the Chinese side, the Asian side, the Eastern side is so kind of, it's intuitive and it makes sense and everything, but it's its own thing, and it's got its own. You got to kind of tune into that. The yogic thing, the Hindu thing, I think is a little bit closer to the West. It's a little bit closer to, like Gnostic Christianity and stuff, and Neoplatonism. It's a little, the Hindu stuff is a little closer to the West. I mean, geographically, it's a little closer. And then when you get way over into China, though, you're getting into some alien stuff to a degree. Yeah, there's a time for it, James. Exactly. There's a time in everybody's life or anyone on the path where they have to go in that Eastern direction, and like never stepping in the same river twice. It reads different on revisiting. Yes. Yeah, the Tao. I'll tell you what, though, I did practice with the I Ching quite a bit. There was a phase where I was doing dowsing and tarot and studying intuitive sciences, and I was using the I Ching. Not every day or anything, but when I needed it. First of all, I don't use divining practices when I don't need them. I do not draw tarot cards or throw the I Ching or anything like that when I don't really need it. And for that reason, whenever I do use those practices, they always work. And they're always right on target because the energy is there. And so I use all those things, but only when needed. But there was a period when I was looking at the I Ching more, and there's like a little family history with the I Ching with me. And my dad was into this stuff. All the stuff that I'm into, my mom and dad were into when I was just before I was born, in the few years before I was born, or in the several years after I was born. Probably because I was born in 1969, and my parents graduated college in 1966. And so they were reading Jung and Campbell and Alan Watts and Tim Leary and Carlos Castaneda and Jane Roberts and all that kind of stuff, probably from like 65 to my dad probably veered off of it in 75. So that whole decade right there, and I was born right in the middle of that. And so I just picked all that up through osmosis. And then my parents kind of went in another direction. And I had my music career and everything, and so I was in that direction. But so then when I start my spiritual path, it's kind of just a recapitulation of what my parents already started, that 60s stuff. I'm really a 60s baby, and I feel like a 60s human. I feel like somebody, and Melissa was a 60s human. She was born before me in 62. And she was in California, in Marin County, in Mill Valley, you know. And then her parents were art and music students. Actually, her mother went to art school, and her father used to put on local classical music concerts. And so so Melissa was very inculcated with 60s culture, 60s and 70s culture. And then when she left home, she went to Bolinas, and there was a whole artist and hippie community out there and everything. And so Melissa was very, very steeped in the 60s and 70s. And so when we got together, it was just like, you know, we were both ready. We had both done enough, you know, non-spiritual living with spiritual aspects dabbed in, and our whole music careers and everything, to where now it was like time. I was 43 and Melissa was 50. So it was time to really go on, you know, deeply go into this stuff. So we did. And Melissa was the I can only see Melissa as a soul sister and as an aspect of me, as a perfect projection of the Sophia stage of my anima in Jungian psychology, and just taken out of me, like, you know, like woman was made out of the rib of Adam. That's how Melissa was. She was made out of my rib. And so that's why everything that we developed together, all of her philosophy, all of her natural intuition and way of being, and her natural attitudes about things, I retain all of those as though they're mine. They're all mine now. They already were mine, and they are mine now. I'm completely integrated with her spiritual philosophy. Let's see what James has been saying. Oh, let's see here. Where are we, James? You were born in 67, right? So you have all the same exact. You came out of that same pool. Then the AM. What is the AMORC thread? You'll have to tell me. American. I can't tell what that is. I don't know that acronym. You lived in Marin, and Rosicrucian. Okay, yes, I know what the Rosicrucians are. I got the basic history from Manly P. Hall, you know, but Melissa and I, there's a Rosicrucian museum and library in San Jose. I'm sure you've been there. And there's some cool pictures of us, really good pictures of both of us down there at that facility. And we went into I remember the day we went there, it was because there was an alchemy exhibit. There was an alchemy, and you know who it was that was giving the lecture on alchemy? My God, can I remember his name now? Oh, the great scholar of alchemy. I'm trying to remember his name right now. I haven't thought about him in quite a while, so I can't remember his name at the very moment. Alchemy Lab was his website, and friends with Heller and Manly and all that kind of stuff. But I'll think of his name in a minute, but he was giving the lecture, and so that was cool. And then the library was open on that day, so we were able to go into the library on the property and stuff, and go through the garden and all that. You lived up in Marin, yeah, you understand that. You stop projecting onto her and let it inform you of your anima. Yeah. Yeah, the way, James, it worked. So I was projecting onto her. We were projecting onto each other, classical Jungian animus projection. Although I found out later about the stages of it that Jung postulated. Helen, Eve, Mary, and Sophia, through these different stages of anima development that a man can go through. And Melissa carried all of those, and because all women carry all of them, and they will all show up for a man, but there will be, depending on where you are in your development, one or more of those stages will be more prominent. And so for me and Melissa, there was the most prominent stage was Sophia, which is the spiritual muse, shamaness, priestess, medicine woman level of things. And so that's where Melissa was to a great degree for me as far as holding my projections. So that was going on there. And we were aware of it, we were aware of how this works and stuff, and we we're keeping an eye on it, but you don't really realize how much you're projecting and how heavy and thick the projections are until that person separates from you, or till they die or whatever. You don't really realize how much it is. And so, once Melissa passed, then it's now been 18 months. On July 5th, it'll be 18 months. And so it's still very close, but it's also far enough away. I've done so much processing, so much grieving, and I made that whole movie about her, and that took me a year. And so that was very therapeutic. And there's just been all of this recension of my anima back into myself. It's like, and I truly felt like my psyche was spilled out on the floor, and that I had to pull it back into myself. And so I've been just going through, whatever, just using my knowledge, using the practices that we took on from others or developed, and just using everything in my toolkit, and a lot of crying, a ton of crying, and just, going through the process of pulling my anima back inside of myself and consciously recognizing these anima qualities and going, okay, I can own that now, I can own that now, I can own that now, and following the synchronicities, following the prompts, following the dreams, and just doing everything that we alchemists are supposed to do and that we do by nature. And so that's what I've been doing, and it's been working. And I'm definitely hurt by the situation, for sure. But as I know now, in order to develop your heart, to develop your soul, to develop your psyche, you have to be cracked open and then heal again. You have to keep getting cracked open and then heal back, and crack open and heal back, to become flexible, and you have to become strong and flexible, both. And so I've just been pulling this stuff back into myself and reintegrating it, and it's going well. And I'm not going to be scarred for life from this. I'm going to be changed for life. Actually, I am going to be scarred for life. This thing of the death of Melissa was a massive initiation. So I am initiated, and I'm pulling everything I possibly can out of the initiation. But I am not fundamentally, it's not a crown of thorns or a spear in my side that I walk around with. It's not I'm converting as much of this darkness, as much of this very unfortunate event for me, into gold as I can. And so that's it. I'm not going to allow myself to not process, because a lot of people, they have these initiations, they don't go through with them completely. They allow all this scar tissue to form. They push so much junk into the shadow, and then they walk around with these burdens and this heavy stuff because they didn't process fully. And I am not doing that. So I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do with this. Oh, you painted yours, exactly. Yeah, I'm not much of a painter. I'm a musician, but it's been funny, because I would have thought that I would have made more music out of what happened with Melissa. I haven't made very much music. I've mostly made, I made that movie. And if you want to see that, James, it's called Melissa Mari, Musical Alchemist of Stage and Psyche. And it's at shadowtechalchemy.com/film. That's like the private link, shadowtechalchemy.com/film. But so I worked on that, and that is that was very cathartic and very, very very, very good for me to do that. And I'm very pleased, actually, that I've been submitting it to a lot of film festivals, and it's won some awards and stuff, small ones, but that's fine. And it's very esoteric. But so I'm just continuing to make, I got more movies about Melissa coming out. So I got one about her music career. I got part 2 of the movie I already made. And I'm going to continue to make movies to where all of the essence of the alchemical relationship and the philosophy and everything that came out of that is going to be in some kind of cultural form, so that I can have it and pass it on, because I got thousands of hours of tapes, of recordings, of video and audio and notebooks, and I got all that, but that's raw, and that has to be put into some kind of mythic content. And so that's what I'm doing now. And so it can all be kind of, turned into my own personal mythic content, and then it can be shared and it can be passed on. And so it won't be lost. Well, thanks, buddy. It was a Negrito phase. I've been through different Negrito phases. That's how I started all this, is through a Negrito. That was 20 years ago. That's how we start. That's the prima materia. That's the beginning of it all. I'm not a martyr over it. Right. Yeah. Melissa herself was kind of a martyr. She had the martyr kind of thing going. She called herself a guinea pig for the great work. She knew that she had a script that said that she might not last that long. She kind of had the martyr archetype going. And so now it's like, I'm not being a martyr over it, but I am kind of I don't know if you have to call it a martyr. It's like a version of it. The wounded healer or the alchemist, is kind of a version, or they're related. And I'm just letting her be a wounded healer and an alchemist. And there's a little bit of martyrdom in there, but so it's in there. But I'm the scribe now. I'm Thoth. We had these spiritual names, Will and Faith. I'm Will and she's Faith. And if you see the movie, you'll see how that works out. But so I'm the writer. I'm the documenter and the writer. I'm the scribe of the whole thing. And we knew that what we were doing was archetypal and alchemical and everything, and that's why I recorded everything. We knew we were going to make a movie, actually. We just didn't know it was going to include, Melissa passing. Yeah, thanks, James. Yeah, it'll be a cycle. Yeah, exactly. It cycles now. Have I read Diane Fortune's The Sea Priestess? Oh no, I haven't. Oh, maybe I should read that. You had the same thing. Yeah, this is the archetypal. It's the archetypal process, the alchemical process. The Hermit now, right? You know what though, James? I'm going to talk about that. The Hermit. It has to be mythic because the mundane will chew you down. Yeah. Oh. It has to be mythic because alchemists have to create myth. Personal and cultural, right? So that's part of our output. That's what's coming out of the laboratory, right? So it's not just psychic material that's coming out of the laboratory, but like you were talking about painting. That's culture now. So psychic material becomes culture, and then culture can be shared. And, but what was it that you said here that I was going to say something to? It has to be mythic because the mundane will chew you down. I was going to say something to that, something else. If we don't ground in, then the magic has no effect. Life is the point. Yeah, you might want to check out, if you haven't seen it, last week I talked about our philosophy of living in the movie. And I clipped that hour out of the last broadcast and I put that up on the Shadowtech Alchemy channel. And so that's kind of like me going over like synchronicities and things and like giving people examples of how we were working with this it's the Hermetic maxim that all is mind, and or the dreamlike nature of reality, but it's the movie-like nature of reality or the simulation-like nature of reality. And so we use the movie metaphor, and I kind of broke it down into some detail. But so I continue to do that. I'm always living in the movie. I'm always putting together personal myth. Now, I'm not allowing myself to go to psychosis and schizophrenia, right? I'm not allowing myself to become some whacked out new age, psychotic that's, well, not psychotic, but verging towards that, right? I'm very much grounded in some archetypal, symbolic, and psychological literacy and basis of things. So I'm not allowing myself to just go off the deep end with creating my own myth. And I talked about this. I'm not concretizing it down into my persona, right? I'm creating myth, like when I talk about with the bees and stuff. I'm creating myth. But I'm making movies about it. I'm making material about it. I'm talking about it. I'm giving an oral transmission, but I'm not concretizing it and saying, yes, I am an emissary from Orion, and I am here to teach you what the people of the star system Draco told me to give to you. I'm not doing that. I'm not concretizing the myth, making it literal. I'm letting it stay in the mythic domain so that it constantly can be open and be interpreted and all of that. But, I know what I was going to say. I'm not becoming a martyr. What I'm doing is I'm taking the material that we developed together, the life art, we called it life art. I'm taking this whole personal alchemical practice that we kind of put the pieces of it together, and then I'm taking that, and then I'm like I'm being careful not to turn it into some kind of a concrete system, and to keep it very flexible and mythic and just general, but so that it could, so that it'll just be general. And I'm always keeping it personal. This is what we did. This is our example, just like how Jung was saying, this is not a prescription for what you have to do. This is what I developed, what I'm doing, and what I think works for me. And it has personal and universal application. And so you then now go and do your own individuation. And so this is me and Melissa's individuation. This is our life art, our practice. And then I'm just sharing that with people as an example. And because, as you can tell, I'm so deep into it, and so take it all so seriously, and it's at the center of my life. And it's not something I've studied like a scholar, and then I can talk to you about, what the Melissa priestesses did and stuff because I'm a scholar. Yeah, I study, sure. But this is much more about what's going on in my life. It's like the difference, it's like I'm a musician, and it's like the difference between being a music connoisseur or a music teacher and being a performing and recording musician, right? So the scholar of esoterica and of alchemy and Jungian psychology is telling you what's in the system and what it's about and how it's been interpreted and what we should think of it and all of this. But the practitioner, the actual alchemist, is applying it in their life, in their relationships, and then tailoring it to their particular psyches and to the container of their relationships. And then they're getting results out of that. And then they can share the results of their laboratory work with other people and say, this is what came out of our lab. And that's what I'm doing now. Melissa and I were doing that the whole time. It took us a couple years. After 2.5 years, our first book came out, Shadow Tech, and then we started talking. But now that she's not here and the whole 12-year thing is done, then I can look at it as one big body of work. And now it has kind of like bookends on it to some degree. So now it's my job to go, this is why I started this show, is to go, okay, this is a place where I can tell people about what Melissa and I created or what we did with ourselves, try to relate it to Jungian psychology and to alchemy in general, and go and show how that this is in the general tradition, but this is our kind of particular version of it. And it's just something for people to listen to and go, oh, okay, that's what they did, that's how they interpret things, and just to have some influence on people who are on this path, because there's so few people who are doing it seriously and putting it in the center of their life, and not just being, studiers of it or scholars of it who just study esoterica or Jungian stuff or whatever. These are people that are like in the lab, and there's so few people doing that. And so we knew that what we were doing was rare, and so now it's like, okay, well, I got to tell people about it. And I mean, I've been doing that, but I got to be more serious about it. So now I'm doing workshops, and I'm going to keep making movies, and I'm doing this broadcast, and it's small. I mean, there's not that many people that, and I'm not much into promotion and all that kind of stuff. But that's kind of like I'm just explaining to James and anybody else that's listening, that's kind of my modality now, that after Melissa passed, is now I'm in transmitter mode. Now I'm in the mode of transmission. That was the giving of the art, of the philosophy. And we had the whole 12 years to kind of understand it, what it was, and work it through, practice it. And now I can kind of talk about it. And I've talked about it and written about it and kind of analyzed it enough to where I can be like, okay, this is what the thing is now. This is, and I'm calling it Solutio now. It was being called Shadow Tech Alchemy, and it's still that. But I felt like I should have some kind of new term that I use now, because because like I said, there's bookends on the relationship with Melissa. I should have some new term. And that term Solutio Melissa and I came up with it together. I came up with it, but she penned it and she said, yeah, that term right there, use that. That sounds good. It was supposed to be like a think tank. I was thinking I could find other people who were, on the same path, and I could interview them and basically have a podcast that was kind of like not just an interview program, but a think tank where we could figure stuff out. And, but I can't find enough people in the world to interview or to bring on as guests to do that with, and to have a weekly or even monthly program. There's just not enough people. When I talk, like James, I'm talking to you right now, and a few others, but you're commenting and you're like, okay, you're on the same page, you understand what's going on here. Well, you know how few people can actually understand this. So how could I have a think tank? How could I have like an online, community with people who are all, coming from this same practice in their own way? And I think the only way that could happen is if I could reach a large enough audience. Like, for example, Jeffrey Mishlove can reach a large enough audience to where, all the handful of alchemists that are out there could be contacted and brought into one platform. But right now I don't have a reach to reach enough people. There's enough people in the world that could do this, but I just can't reach them right now. So that had to go on hold. So then I just called this broadcast Solutio, because I don't have to rely on anybody else, and I can just get in. And I just said, okay, well, I'm just going to talk about everything that Melissa and I developed and our philosophy, and I'm just going to have different shows that are about different aspects of it. So that's what I've been doing for the last 6 months. So that's what the point of it all is. Oh, and then also I was going to say something about what you're saying about the hermit. The hermit is always part of the alchemical path. An alchemist is a hermit to a degree. But there are modes when you're more in hermitage and then you're more in proselytizing mode. And not every alchemist is a proselytizer at all. No, it's probably not the average. But they're more on the hermit side. And I've actually, if this is frustrating to me, because I do know some other alchemists, and they are more on the hermit side, and it's hard to get them to do stuff. So, but I kind of have an extrovert side too as a performer, and Melissa was very much a stage performer, and she had an extrovert side too. So I can turn into that. It's not always the most comfortable, but I can turn it on. And then I can go into proselytizing or teaching mode. And so now I'm just doing that, because I realize that, it's all like this. It's all in waves and in cycles. And so now it's time to do extroversion. I did introversion for 12 years with Melissa. And I did introversion more or less for 20 years. And so now I'm more in the extroverted mode now. The bees, there's a definite Masonic thread connected to alchemical ideas. Oh yeah, and Sufi. Yeah, I'm going to be reading these books about the bee priestesses and about bee shamanism, and so I'll be learning more about that. Yeah, I mean, we could. It's getting late, so I don't think I'm going to talk too much about bees tonight. But yeah, my myth is uniquely mine, but at the same time, it's made out of archetypal contents, which are universal. So it's both. It's both universal and personal. You say in your videos, as artists bridge practitioners and academics. Yes, exactly. Right. Exactly, the practitioner and the scholar. And I got the scholar in me, definitely, but I'm more on the practitioner side, for sure. Thinking of bringing in book reviews. Okay, I'll click on your I'll make sure I'm subscribed to your channel, James, when the show's done. What's up, Theo? How you doing, brother? You came in late. It was a good show. Like I ramble, like I do. And but I went through a lot of notes on the on what I would think are like our alchemical ethics. Not everything. Like I say, that article that I have on the articles page of Shadow Tech Alchemy called "Write Your Own Manifesto of Ethics." That is my whole kind of psychosocial ethical manifesto and prescription or whatever. And so everything kind of aligns with that. That all came inside the relationship with Melissa. And then I kind of built on that, and I brought up some other things. And so I, there has to be an outer ethical side to this alchemical work. And I'm feel very rooted in Eric Neumann's depth psychology and a new ethic, and that whole thing. And so I found that late, but it's exactly what I believe. No, it's going to be it was a good show. It was a good show. And then me and James kind of just hung out for 20 minutes or something and talked. So that's what's been going on in the background. Oh, I don't think you're coming from left. Oh, to see that your videos are not left field. Okay, I'll look and we'll see. I'll let you know what I think. Okay, folks. So on these Tuesdays when I do these shows, I stay up really late and I don't even make dinner until I get off these things. So now it's 10:15 my time and I'm starving. So it was a great show, and thanks to everybody for hanging out. You're welcome. Yeah, I'm glad to meet you too, James. I think I mean, haven't you been in here before? I thought I've seen you in here before. Maybe I noticed when you subscribed to my channel. That's probably when I saw your name. So that's great. Yeah, we're connected now. And let's see here. No, I'm new. Oh, you're new. You're new. Okay. Well, hi and welcome. And so, and if you know any other alchemists, James, bring them in too. And so I'm trying to think if there's anything else. That's it. I gotta. Last thing I was gonna say, I have a new paper out. I got 3 white papers that I put together over the last, 4 or 5 months. I've been working on some different white papers. And 3 of them, kind of like finished them all. It's kind of like back and forth. And they're up on the website. So on the shadowtechalchemy.com website, there's a link for a page for papers. And if you go there, the top 3 are those 3 papers. One is called, the last one that I just completed is called Integral Shadow. And this is the framing of the Jungian shadow through integral theory's 4 quadrants tool. And I've been working on that for a long time. And a version of it was in the book Transforming Darkness. A couple years ago that came out. And but then I really developed it and got into more detail and put in more practices and just get that. Those are all free up there. Just so grab that Integral Shadow one. Then there's one called the Shadow Complex. And this is where I take the idea of complexes from Jungian theory and I kind of break it down and try to bring some clarity to it. And try to differentiate the difference between the shadow proper and complex dysregulation. So that's up there too. And then there's the one on the archetype of the virus. And that's up there too. So those are all, kind of recapitulations of stuff that we'd been working on for years, but but nice and concise in these papers. So those are on the website, and then I got my workshop, which is happening July 11th. That's in Austin, Texas. Most people that listen to this are not in Austin, but so there's a Jungian shadow work workshop going on at Casa de Luz Village in Austin on the 11th of July. So that's it. That's the updates. And thanks to James and Theo and Dina and JG Gunner and everybody else that came in tonight. Have a great week, and I will see you all next week. And if anybody has any ideas for what they want to talk about, send me a message and we'll do it. Okay, bye folks.